I'm back with Eugene's final part 3 interview. If you missed part 1 or 2, you can go back and watch that before this one if you want. It's also interesting that you bring up Alcohol Anonymous. They use religion a lot. Do you think religion is helpful for people that are victim of circumcision? Because I feel like a lot of times that's a trigger for
Yeah.
intactivists.
Yeah, I think yeah, one thing I would say, I think it's unfortunate that it is normalized in religion to people. And I think it's important to mention that I think in religious texts, I think all kinds of things are written, such as I think there's probably passages about like stoning people to death for, certain transgressions. So one has to keep in mind that these texts were written, thousands of years ago. And I think the other problem is that when people are fundamentalists and literally interpret everything that's written, I think that's where people get into a lot of trouble because at least in the US, it's not considered okay to stone people to death, even though like some fundamentalists could say, well, it's written in the Bible or in the Torah or whatnot. And so because I think there are passages in probably more in the Old Testament, I think in about those sorts of things, but doesn't make it I think right or okay and or acceptable. And I think circumcision falls within that. Like, okay, yeah, it's written, but you there's a passage I think. Sorry, I don't know the exact one, but I think there's something. Maybe it's in two New Testament saying something like if you're, and I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong, but something like if your right hand causes you or your left hand or something causes you to sin or something like cut it off and throw it away. I mean, and one can literally interpret that and it can be seen as very problematic. So I think with circumcision, it's a similar thing. Like, why, we don't stone people to death? Why do you have, what, like, there's no reason to, I think, be fundamentalist and literally interpret. I think it's important to, when reading a text to also keep in mind things like common sense and basic human values and not be fundamentalist about it. So I think religion, it's tricky because I think it can help. I think it can also, depending on how it's interpreted or practiced, can also harm. I think certain religions are more prone to it than others. I think that, but I think that's why I'm personally, in a sense, more of a fan of spirituality because it doesn't, I think, tend to come with those sorts of maybe all those stringent, kind of rules and dogmatic things and all of that. It's more kind of, I think, about just kind of basic human values and spiritual values. And so, and I think religion has that too. It just, and again, I think it depends how one interprets and practices it. So I think that within religion there can be helping things and within spirituality there can be and I think it just yeah comes down to how people interpret and practice it and I think that again it can be very problematic when people take a fundamentalist approach to religious texts and say like well it says that here therefore we should stone people to death or whatever and some countries I think do still practice stoning to death but I mean I think, as you see, and it's not something that I think most of the in today's world is okay. And I think with circumcision, it'll eventually be the same way. It's important, I think, to not be so fundamentalist and literally, interpret everything like that that's written in a religious text. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. But religion does help intactivists get through this though.
I think it can. I think it's tricky because I think again, it's like I think religion can help in general, or well, religion or spirituality, I think can be helpful with things like trauma. I think a person's faith can be very helpful, but I think it is important to just be sensitive to the fact that some people feel they were harmed by maybe certain religious practices or things. Maybe also people who feel, if they're gay and they're from like a very religious background, maybe that doesn't accept that. I think that's where it gets tricky. I think if you go deeper at its core, I think that it can. I think that people unfortunately often stick to the outer stuff with all the rituals and rules and don't look kind of deeper. I think when you go kind of deeper, you see that the more important part is about kind of things like, kindness and compassion and not harming others. And so I think when you go to that, yeah, I mean, I think it can be helpful and the faith aspect having maybe or spiritual aspect can be very helpful. I think it definitely has the potential to be helpful. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I know you already answered what coping mechanisms do you commonly see
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
MGM use, both helpful and harmful. I actually asked that by accident. But there is something a fan did bring up about, do you think CBT, which is cognitive
Yeah.
behavior therapy, do you think it can lower the likelihood of parents electing to circumcise their children?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I think that yeah, I mean, I think CBT in a loose sense can. I mean, in the sense of like so CBT a lot of times deals with, kind of automatic thoughts, and so I think as a general principle it can help maybe in the sense of like being able to reframe or re-examine your own kind of thinking. So maybe challenging some automatic thoughts. I think the more important thing in a sense is kind of that awareness and self-awareness and critical thinking, because I think when people just blindly follow what they're told, I mean, I think that also can set them up for a lot of trouble. So I think when you're able to think for yourself, you're able to question things, you're able to do your own research, you're able to say like, does this make sense? Does it not? Does this align with like with common sense, with basic human values? I think that's where people can really kind of expand their thinking awareness and be more or less inclined to fall for those sorts of things. So that's what I would say. I think CBT can be to some extent as well, and I think also working on kind of self-awareness and mindfulness on critical thinking skills, being able to analyze information, questioning things. I think those are all important.
Okay, yeah. And there's a follow-up question asking, what about
Mhm.
CBT lowering the likelihood of doctors promoting circumcisions? I feel like your answer is going to be the same for but
Yeah, I
doctors.
would say
But
kind of
yeah.
kind of the same in a sense, like with yeah, I mean, I'd say because they're also, I think, and some of them, I'm not, I think a lot of them are probably just there's an aspect of ignorance that that's just how they were taught and they don't question it. And I think they're just doing what they were taught. They may not view it as, I mean, some of them may actually, which is a much worse thing, and I don't know how it is in percent. I would think that probably some of them maybe know what they're doing in the harms and do it anyway, maybe for the money incentive or whatever. But I would tend to think that most of them probably are just that's how they were taught, and then they're circumcised and they grew up and that's how they're just viewed as the norm. And so they just and I think it's until they start kind of really questioning things and like with that kind of critical approach and like, why is this done? Like, does this really make sense? Like, where's the evidence? And even questioning like with some of the with studies too, really, I think in science studies are even when I think only when they've been independently replicated many, many, many times by independent that people start, I think that there's more evidence. And even then, there's a lot of problems, I think, with replication at least I know in psychology, I think that a lot of times people have trouble replicating the same results. So I think even studies need to be taken with a large grain of salt and questioned. And I think that, especially with the circumcision thing, I think that a lot of it is already biased, being that, these studies are coming from the US where the circumcision is viewed as normal and by doctors who are circumcised who maybe have an agenda to promote circumcision. I think it's important to examine conflicts of interest in studies, potential biases. So that's where those I think for doctors they can as well, but I think they would need to take the same kind of critical thinking approach and questioning and looking for biases and all of that. And I think a lot of times people don't do that, but I think that hopefully, I think nowadays maybe more so, and hopefully in the future that will be even more. So yeah, yeah.
All right. So I'm actually curious, have you heard of people who fund research that they'll run the same research like 10 times, let's say between like 40 different people. So they'll get 400 people and they will
Yeah.
do 40 individual subsections, and that they pick the one that most goes along with their theory that they already have. Are you aware of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I've heard of things like that, I think, and it doesn't surprise me because yeah, and keeping in mind that there with a lot of studies, I think, or I don't know the percent, but I think probably a good number of them have also certain financial backing from certain institutions that are looking for certain results and yada yada. So, I think it's very tempting then to kind of yeah kind of get a kind of what they call I think like a confirmation bias, so like yeah and also like picking out something that just so happens to align with what it is that you're looking for. I think that's probably a big problems with probably with a lot of studies.
Hey guys, it's me, Pods. I'm briefly interrupting this interview to let you know about the Pods e-commerce program. It is vital to keeping the Prevail over the System channel alive. Go and join us on our Discord to learn more. And best of all, it's free to partake in the Pods e-commerce program, and we don't need any of your information whatsoever. This helps us keep the interviews coming along with other Intactivist content to empower, teach, and update Intactivist with very important information, as well as being the voice for the Intactivist public. Thank you all so much. Okay, now back to the interview. Okay, I have another fan question. This is
Yeah.
from a different person. It says, ask them what they have to say to people calling Georgianne Chapin a hypocrite. I believe they're talking about how she was running the Hudson Health plan that was paying doctors to circumcise while also running Intact America that was telling people not to circumcise.
To be honest with you, I did not know that. It's if it's true, if someone, can share the information, so I'd be interested to read it. If that's the case, I mean, I think I don't want to, I don't want to just initially go and, just criticize it or whatever for their, I don't want to criticize her because I don't know the full fact. I'm just hearing it for the first time. If that's true, I mean, I think that's that's an unfortunate thing to hear, but I don't want to jump to any conclusions. It would be good to see kind of some evidence for that. But if I know Georgianne, I would be very surprised if that is true. I know to me, I've talked to her, seems very passionate about the cause, and it to me, it just wouldn't really make much sense, honestly. Why I should do one or the and then the other. But I don't know. I don't like to I'm not gonna like don't want to be judgmental here, and and I don't have, if I were to see that it's true, then I would maybe think a little bit different about the whole thing. But at the moment, like that's the first time I've heard it, so it would be good to basically see, or maybe I'll look online or see some evidence for it. But certainly if it's true, I wouldn't don't think that's a great thing. But knowing Georgianne, I don't know, I would just personally be very surprised because she's seems so sincere in her work and her efforts and everything. So yeah, but thanks that they brought it up, and I'd be happy to look at they can provide somehow some more maybe if they provide more information to you and you can send to me, or just tell me where they found it. I would be, interested to take a look, sure.
Yeah, we actually done a whole video on it, and it's actually in our book as well. Yeah, you can definitely go ahead and check out the video that Potts did. I guess I could give you the link and you can watch it.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. Another fan question though. It says, oh my gosh, does Pod supporters get a discount or promotional offer like a code or something? How does pricing work? I actually have a question. Like, do you get covered by like American health insurance or like European health insurance? Like, how does that work with you, I guess?
So are you asking about if just when working with clients, if I take insurance?
Yes. Well, there's like a bunch of questions in here. One is like if
Sure.
people listening get a discount code or promotional offer. Kind of rude to ask, but the fan asked it, so you can say
Well,
no. If you're
I'll
like, oh
tell
no, it's all
what I
good.
can say. What I can say is that I didn't have one prepared or anything, so I would just say if they what I don't like to turn people away for payment type things. So I mean, I have mixed feelings about insurance companies, but I do work with United Healthcare. That's currently I think the only one that I'm taking. But I do also offer like sliding scale with people, and but as a general thing, I don't like to turn people away based on ability to pay. So I usually try to find some if they're honestly not able to afford the rate that I charge, then I like to kind of talk with them and see what might work for them, and ideally something that also works for me, and we can kind of come to an agreement. So that's what I would say. I don't really have a specific like like discount offer code at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, it's all good. I mean, once again, it's a fan question. I'm just asking it. So I
Sure, yeah,
appreciate
of
your
course.
honesty. Yeah, and hopefully people definitely go ahead and reach out for you. Do you have like a roundabout price just so people kind of know what they're working with? Because I know some therapists, they go for like $300 an hour, you know?
Yeah. I don't do, yeah, I mean, I know, especially in the, well, New York area, I think from what I've been seeing, to me, it seems like rates can go up to like 300 or 350 per session, which, I don't know, on the face of it seems quite high to me, but different people charge differently. My current rate is 175 session. That's for clients without insurance. With the insurance I take with United Healthcare, usually I think unless they have a high deductible, it's more, they may have like a copay of like, 15 or 20 or something like that. But that's currently the only insurance. Working with that may change in the future, but at the moment that's the only one, and then self-pay and um, there's basically yeah, and like sliding scale stuff like that. So that's hopefully that answers the question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Another question. Okay, so the fan questions are actually done. But do you actually watch any of Potts's content?
Oh, I wasn't actually aware of it until I saw one of my clients sent me a video, and I think where it was kind of a news update, and you talked about Intact America and how they have this like therapy group, and you showed the page with the therapist, and I was on there. So I thought that was really really cool that you did that. And then he was saying something like, "Oh, that that you're running an interview series, and thought it might be a good idea." Suggested to like, "Oh, hey, maybe you can go on there." And I thought, yeah, I mean, I thought that would be a really great idea. And so yeah, I reached out. That's so I wasn't really aware of it before. I just saw a segment that one of my clients sent. But yeah, I hadn't seen it before, but I think it's from what I've seen so far, it seems like you're doing really great work. So I really appreciate that, and that you like mentioned Intact America and the therapists there and everything. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that for sure. So, where can
Cool.
people keep up with you if they want to follow you? And like your socials, if you want to give those away, or like how would they reach out to you to get therapy if they
Yeah,
wanted?
I mean, they can reach out. There's a number of ways. I mean, I'm on Psychology Today. I'm on other directories. My website is just it's www.progressivetherapist.com. It's all there's no like dashes or anything. It's just progressivetherapist.com. They can, my email's Eugene, so EUGENE at progressivetherapist.com. The on I can go through, I don't know, probably be too long to go through each of the socials. I think if they go on my website anyway, they could probably see links to the socials. They can call my business phone number, which is it's +1 914 296 0858. I do work with clients sometimes internationally, so yeah, I usually just put the country code as well. But yeah, I mean those are some ways. I'm on the Intact America website as well. There's a page there that lists the therapists there. So there's yeah, and there's I'm there. I'll tell you the URL for it. It's intactamerica.org/therapy, and that has the listing of I'm on there. There's a number of other therapists, so people can also you know, take a look at that. I would say that would be it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I will definitely have that down in the description below. Okay, so if people had to take one thing from this conversation, what would it be?
I feel like we covered a lot of good material, so it's hard to just I think maybe hard to just pick one, but I think that they can take the importance of screening a therapist early to see if they will be supportive and helpful, and not, not just brush off the topic of circumcision. I think that like other traumas, there is hope for being able to, especially through things I'd say like EMDR, maybe other therapies, to get to a better place to overcome it in a sense, just like people can, I think, with a lot of other traumas. I think that I don't know, that's not necessarily one thing, but I think that that would be one of the in this particular conversation, I think one of the important points is the importance of being able to, of screening for a therapist early to see that they will be helpful for you, and just that there is, I think a lot of times people will feel like, oh, some clients have reached out and think like, well, you probably can't help me anyway, or like they feel that they'll be just, again, like kind of, their concerns will be disregarded or brushed off. And I think it's a shame because I think there are good therapists out there who can help to get to, I help to get to a much better place, but it can require that kind of step of, I guess in a sense, taking the risk and not being put off if you do come across somebody who's not a good fit, just moving on to somebody else who hopefully is, and that there, I think, is hope for being able to work through circumcision trauma and, traumas in general for that matter. But in this particular case, yeah, working through circumcision trauma and having a much better quality of life and yeah, mental health and mental wellness, all of that.
Okay, that was Dr. Eugene's final part 3 interview. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. I'll put his links down in the description below so you can follow him. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss our other Intactivist content, including interviews that we release every single week. Please share this and like this video to get this out to more people. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Bye!